Hello everyone, I'm Vishal Salsekar and today we are going to discuss the News Today edition of 19th of August, right? So in this edition of News Today, we are going to discuss the five main news. The first is regarding India as Vishwabandhu through the space modernization. So recently in the International Space Station, the Indian astronaut Subhanshu Shukla, who came back and met Prime Minister, talked about the India's role as Vishwabandhu. Next is about the FRBM Act compliance report, which is being submitted at the CAG's end. Right. Next is regarding the Jan Vishwas amendment of the Provisions Bill 2025. So, how certain rationalization as far as the acts are concerned with respect to the penalization, with respect to criminalization, all these things we are going to discuss. Next is about the renewable consumption obligation framework. So, we will discuss that how it is different from the renewable purchase obligation RPOs. Last in this is the technology in the water management. So with respect to irrigation and all, we are going to discuss about the technologies. Next, there are certain quick updates that we are going to discuss as a part of this particular discussion. So let's start the discussion with the very first news, which is regarding the space experiments conducted by Shubhanshu Shukla personify India as the Vishwabandhu Bharat. What does this mean? Vishwabandhu Bharat means Vishwabandhu represents the global or basically the universal brother. So India is acting as a helping hand as far as the global progress, global prosperity is concerned, right? So from the perspective of the UPSC examination, this particular topic is relevant from the general studies paper 3, the space technology and the exploration. So the aspects related to the India's progress with respect to space, indigenization of technologies with respect to space, right? So we are going to discuss about that. And even apart from that, the GS paper 2, international relations, that how India is strategically positioning itself, how India is flexing its muscles in the space domain as far as the cooperation with different countries are concerned, right? So now recently, as Subhanshu Shukla, who became the first astronaut from the side of India to reach International Space Station ISS. Now, see, the Rakesh Sharma was the first person from the side of India who reached space, but that was in the USSR's domain. That was not the International Space Station. So it was Shubhanshu Shukla who was the first astronaut who reached to the International Space Station. Now, how it is significant as far as India is concerned, we have elaborately discussed in a previous discussion with respect to the Axiom mission and how it was significant, right? Now, this particular time when he came back, when he met the Prime Minister, he had highlighted that what kind of role India is actually playing and what further can be played as far as the global brotherhood is concerned, right? How India is helping with respect to different countries, right? So now the role of the space sector in making India as the Vishwabandhu means how India can collaborate with different countries, how India can support different countries, how India can provide the helping hand, right? So the first is the global collaboration. So you know that with different countries, India is doing the collaboration with respect to the NISAR, which is the NASA ISRO synthetic aperture radar, which was recently launched as a collaboration between the ISRO and NASA, which is helping with respect to the Indian efficiency with respect to the space domain, and apart from that, the United States expertise in this specific domain, right? So it is India's scientific handshake with the world, because what kind of technologies we are utilizing, what kind of support we are going to provide, it will be provided to the different countries, even specifically to the developing countries, whether it is with respect to the Earth observation, whether it is with respect to the disaster prediction, right? With all these things, we are going to help the countries and specifically the countries of the developing world. Next is about the open data access. Now, what is open data access? Generally, whenever the country's astronauts are going, they are performing the experiments for their own, right? Not necessarily they are helping the other countries, but in this particular missions, India is helping with the democratization of data. India is providing the data to different countries, because many such countries are there which might not be having the access to this particular data. So in that case, what India is doing, India is providing data in the public domain for a lot of experiments that will be beneficial for the humanity at large. Next is about the tackling global change challenges, which includes a lot of of issues, maybe the disaster management, maybe with respect to the issues like climate change, the agriculture sustainability, increasing the agricultural yield, productivity, all these things, as well as the hazard monitoring, all these things are going to be provided as a part of this. Next is the global commons. Now India is not only becoming the accumulator of the knowledge, but India is also distributing the knowledge through different channels. So through these particular missions, India is also becoming the knowledge contributor to the world. So India is helping with respect to whatever technological cooperation it is doing with different countries. It is disseminating the information to the other countries also. Next is the diplomatic leverage. So now see, when India is flexing its muscles in the space domain, India is going to gain a lot of weightage. India is going to gain the space power wala time, right? And in that particular context, India can collaborate with the multiple other countries and their powerful space agencies. For in this particular case, like in the context of, let's say, NISAR, it was with the United States. Apart from that, India is also developing a lot of indigenous technologies. For example, its own the GPS-like system, which is the regional navigation system in the form of NAVIC, right? Now, in the context of Operation Sindoor, you might have realized that why it is very important in order to have the indigenous technology as far as these particular critical things are concerned. We have faced the troubles at the time of Kargil war, but to not go in that particular issue again, we had developed our own indigenous technologies, like in the form of NAVIC. Lastly, in this, the tech prowess at the low cost. So India is famous for this. We had seen in the context of the Mars orbiter mission, or maybe the Chandrayaan 1, or maybe in the context of Chandrayaan 3. So the projects are at a very cheap rate, yet performing a lot of complex calculations and doing very well as far as the global standards are concerned. So the low cost innovation, designs, and operating the complex long duration space systems. So all these things India is able to do within the stipulated amount of money as well as the time frame. Right. Now, what India had taken as far as the major space initiatives are concerned, so the very prominent and recently being launched, the NASA ISRO Synthetic Aperture Radar NISAR mission, right? Now, in that case, what India is doing, they are providing the Earth observation, right? So through this, whether it is the changes because of the climate change, whether it is with respect to the global warming, whether it is with respect to different kind of disasters and the changes occurring because of the disasters, whether it is about the agricultural yield. So in all these particular field, this project is going to help eventually, right? Next is the Bharatiya Antariksh Station BAS by 2035. So like the International Space Station, India is also planning to have its own international space station in the form of the Bharatiya Antariksh Station BAS by 2035, where we will be hosting our own astronauts and it will be the indigenous one. Next is the crewed lunar mission. So there will be the crew that will be landing on the lunar surface by 2040. So there will be a specific mission with respect to the lunar surface. Apart from that, there will be the Gaganyaan program. So a very much awaited along with a very much talked about program, which is the Gaganyaan program, which is having initially in 2026, the target is to have the Vyomamitra, which is the humanoid, which is going to provide help with respect to this particular mission ka prototype, so that eventually next year when we are going with the human crew, at that point of time there should not be any kind of scope for any specific malfunction. So 2026 mein there will be the humanoid in the name of Vyomamitra, and 2027 mein we will have our own astronaut led Gaganyaan mission, where there will be the low earth orbit circulation by the astronauts, and in that particular context for 3 days they will be observing the earth and then they will be safely coming back to the earth. So roughly at 400-kilometer orbit they are going to maneuver the earth, right? So these are the initiatives that India is doing. So it is about the Bharatiya Antariksh Station crewed lunar mission, then the Gaganyaan program, right? So these are the initiative. Now UPSC had previously asked the question regarding what is the India's plan to have its own space station and how it will benefit our space program. So there is the Gaganyaan mission and then there is the Bharatiya Antariksh Station, right? So both the plans are there. One will be the temporary one where there will be orbiting for 3 days, and then there will be by 2035 we will be having our own space station, the permanent one. Next is the discuss India's achievement in the field of space science and the technology, how the application of this technology has helped India in the socio-economic development. So how the space technology is helping with respect to the socio-economic development of country. So it is the application of the space technology that you should be concerned about. So this particular thing you should be having a clear idea about the indigenization of technology, the space programs, and the next particular discussion that we have to do is about the CAG's report. So CAG's report on the FRBM Act presented in the Parliament. So Fiscal Responsibility and the Budget Management Act, which was passed in 2003. So there is a provision for every year assessment by the CAG in the form of the CAG report. So that particular report has been presented now in the Parliament. Now, from the perspective of the UPSC examination, GS paper 3, public finances, fiscal management, this is an important topic. And apart from that, GS paper 2, from the perspective of the governance, parliamentary oversight, where the role of CAG is very, very important, because as a constitutional body, and apart from that, specifically mentioning and deriving its power from the Constitution of India, this is a very important body, right? Now, briefly regarding the FRBM Act. So what is the Fiscal Responsibility and the Budget Management Act, FRBM Act of 2003? So the initial objective was in order to ensure that there should be the macroeconomic stability. At the same time, there will be intergenerational equity. How this intergenerational equity has to be ensured? So suppose karo, right now today, if you take a large debt, in that particular case you have to repay that particular debt year on year basis, yes or no? So suppose karo, the government of this day takes a lot of debt, and in that case they create the issue with respect to debt sustainability for the subsequent generations, means next governments, next to next governments, right? So it will create a lot of liability. So in order to prevent these kind of issues, the Fiscal Responsibility and the Budget Management Act was passed in 2003. There were certain targets that were made ki in order to ensure ki bhai, there should not be deficit beyond this level, there should not be debt created as the percentage of GDP beyond this particular level, in order to ensure the sustainability. Now, how this particular macroeconomic stability and the intergenerational equity has to be ensured? Through the reduction of the deficit and hereby the debt. Means there should be whatever is the outgoing money and whatever is the earnings of the government. Jo difference aata hai, that is the deficit. So there has to be the fundamental things that have to be done in order to reduce the deficit, right? Whether it is the fiscal deficit or whether it is any other kind of deficits that are there. So that has to be reduced. And apart from that, the debt which government is taking from different sources, including the external sources, those also have to be reduced. And this is not a drastic step. This is a step-by-step process where this particular year, then next year ka target, then next year ka target. So like this, the targets were made. Now, this annual review of the FRBM Act and the compliance of this has been done by CAG. This is mandated as per this particular act of the FRBM, right? So this is the CAG report as a part of this. Now, what has been highlighted in the report that have to be the important thing, because UPSC keeps on asking question about these particular kind of report and data. Now, the first important highlight is about the central government's debt as a percentage of GDP. So now see, whenever we are calculating the debt, generally it is considered as a percentage of GDP. GDP ke kitna percentage is the debt, right? So the consistently it is declining. So if the statement is asking it is consistently increasing, no, it is consistently declining. Now what percentage? 57% of the GDP by the end of March 2024. So March 2024 mein it is 57% of the GDP, from reduced from 61.38% of GDP in the year 2020-21. Now see, we have to take into consideration that there was COVID time period, roughly from 2020 to 2022. There was a lot impact of the COVID-19, and that's why there have been the extension of the targets that were taken as a part of the FRBM Act. Right. Next is regarding the government's debt accumulation, means government's पर कितना debt accumulate हो रहा है, and whether government is in the ability to to basically manage that particular debt and service that debt, right? So the pace of the debt accumulation is less than the GDP expansion, means the economy is growing at such a rate which is surpassing जिस तरीके से debt create हो रहा है, मतलब economy is expanding more compared to the debt. That is a good sign, right? So the economy has grown to absorb and service the accumulation of debt. मतलब we are creating more rather than we are generating more debt. That is a good sign for the economy. Next is about the debt sustainability analysis. So what is this particular debt sustainability analysis? So public debt repayment to the public debt receipt ratio has reduced from 86.66% to 81.46%. Now what is this particular public debt repayment to the public debt receipt? Now what is public debt receipt? Means जितना आपने debt लिया है, and public debt repayment means how much you are repaying, how much of that particular debt you are taking which you are utilizing to repay. मतलब suppose करो if this is 100 means you have taken 100 as the receipt. Now out of that 100 how much you are utilizing it to repay the debt, मतलब कितना आप उस proportion में से utilize कर रहे हो in order to service that debt. Now previously it used to be 86.66%, right? So out of the total 86% is going for the repayment of that particular debt. Now it has been reduced to 81, means the remaining one जो reduction हुआ है that is being utilized for the growth of the economy, that is being utilized for the developments in different sectors of the economy rather than just being utilized to repay the debt. Now that is helping in order to help economy to grow, right? Now what are the targets that have been taken as a part of the FRBM Act? So the general government debt, now this general government debt includes both the central government's debt along with the state government's debt. So central government along with inclusion of all the state government debt should not be exceeding 60%. Right now it was previously for the central government only it was 61%, that has now reduced to 57%. So general government debt को reduce करना है to the limit of 60%. This is the target. Next is the central government debt does not exceed 40%. So we have to reduce the central government debt to the 40% of GDP. That means for the state government it is 20%, right? Then the fiscal deficit up to 3% of the GDP by 31st March 2021, but this was later on extended because of the COVID-19, right? But the commitment to attain the fiscal deficit lower than 4.5% of GDP by 25-26. That's why the target has been increased. The duration has also been increased because of the pandemic year. So now it is 4.5% of GDP by FY 25-26. Next is the not give additional guarantees, means generally whenever there might be some kind of loans that might be taken maybe by the corporations or maybe by the state governments where the guarantee is being provided by the central government on the security of the CFI or the Consolidated Fund of India. Matlab, if that particular organization or maybe the government is failing to repay that debt, so the fund is being taken from the Consolidated Fund of India. So in that case, the limit has been kept to the 0.5%, matlab 0.5% of GDP se zyada. Now they cannot give the additional guarantee. That is to ensure that the central government should not give the additional guarantee in order to maybe to please different government or maybe to different sectors, right? So this additional guarantee should not be given more than 0.5% of GDP. Now UPSC had previously asked the question FRBM Act 2018 में, read this particular question and I'm expecting you to write the answer in the comment section with respect to this question, because this question was of 2018. That means it might be taking data from 2016-17 around ka. Now obviously this data will not be asked this particular year में, but through this you will be able to get that what kind of targets were taken previously and right now what we have achieved till now. Right. So you have to answer this particular question based on this PYQ. And now if there may be question regarding this act in the prelims, the question will be like this. In the mains examination, the question will be generally on the basis of the debt sustainability, debt to GDP ratio, the expansion of economy vis-a-vis development of debt. So these particular scenario you should be taking into consideration while writing the answers. Next is about the Jan Vishwas bill. So the Jan Vishwas Amendment of the Provisions Bill 2025 introduced in the Lok Sabha. Now, from the perspective of the UPSC examination syllabus, the GS paper 2 and GS paper 3, this is an important topic because see, GS paper 2, because the polity and governance has, and whenever there is any specific bill or the amendment, that becomes the part of the GS paper 2, right? But that has something to deal with, let's say, the ease of doing business or economy related things, then in that particular case, the implication will be on the economy, sustainability, and then it can become the part of your GS paper 3 also. So the governance, regulatory reforms, then there have been the transfer of this particular bill or the select committee related referral that has been done, and ease of doing business that also has been talked about with respect to this particular Jan Vishwas Amendment of the Provisions Bill 2025. Now, what is this Jan Vishwas Amendment of the Provisions Bill 2025? So, basically, being guided by the provisions of the ease of doing business and ease of living. Now, what is ease of doing business? Suppose, karo, if in order to start a business in any specific economy, there is a lot of procedure. And because of these particular procedural complexity, you are not able to start your own business. Isn't it creating certain kind of hindrance in order to ensure better entrepreneurship? Yes or no? So in that case, what the economy should be doing, making the regulation simpler in order to promote and boost the economy. Yes or no? So in that case, the Jan Vishwas Amendment of the Provision Bill is targeting towards that. It is ensuring the ease of doing business along with the ease of living. Matlab, there are certain acts jahan par the minor offense ke liye you are punishing a lot. Now, previously that might have been a kind of issue, but later on, as we evolved, certain things became the norm. And now, in that particular case, if at first violation ka instance, if you are punishing too harshly, in that case, you are preventing a lot of good opportunities in the market, and you are creating unnecessarily complex scenario, a kind of complex scenario which is going to impact a lot on the economy, right? So in that case, simplifying of the compliance, updating the laws wherever the complicated issues are there, to simplify that through amendment procedure, then embedding the trust based governance, right? Now, the Jan Vishwas Act, it was already previously there in 2023, where a lot of acts have been decriminalized, certain provisions have been decriminalized. So 183 provisions of the 42 Central Act. Matlab, previously there might be certain harsh punishment for this specific crime. Now what they have done, theek hai, agar maan lijiye if there is some minor violation, so in that case, first instance mein you will be giving some warning, not directly punishing, but later on, suppose if there is a repeated offense, or maybe with respect to the habitual offenders, in that case, obviously you are going to punish that person. Now, why we are doing all these things? In order to ensure the minimum government and maximum governance, in order to ensure that there should be betterment of the governance framework, right? And promoting the trust based regulation. Now, what are the key features as far as this particular Jan Vishwas Bill amendment? Now, first is regarding decriminalization. So previously also in 2023, when there was Jan Vishwas Act of 2023 that was there have been decriminalization. Now that is following up further with respect to certain other acts. There have been 288 provisions, that is replacing the imprisonment clause for the minor defaults with the monetary penalties or warning. So sometime what happens that for some minor criminal acts, there are harsh punishment which eventually prevent people for performing certain tasks also. Maybe in business, suppose if there is some minor lapse, and if you are criminalizing that particular act, then maybe a chance that in economy many people would not volunteer for performing that particular task, right? So in that case, what you are doing, replacing the imprisonment clause for the minor default with the monetary penalties and warning. Now this is for the minor defaults, not for the major or the grave violations, right? So for the T Act, Legal Metrology Act, then the Motor Vehicles Act, then the Drug and Cosmetics Act. So certain acts have been chosen, the provisions have been chosen carefully, the clauses have been seen, and then accordingly there have been reduction of the criminalization wala tendencies in these particular acts. Next is about the rationalization of penalties. Now what we are doing, so there will be the gradual increment of the penalties. Initial wale cases mein there may be some warning, because it might be because of the neglect also, but later on, suppose if there have been repeated offense, obviously you are going to punish harshly, right? So in that case, These will be the graduated penalties for different cases for different set of people. Next is about the first time contravention. So 76 offenses under 10 acts where the advisory or the warning for the first time. That means suppose karo, if you are guilty for the first time, maybe in your innocence, so in that case what you are going to do, there will be 76 offenses in the 10 act where the advisory or the warning is going to be provided. Means at very first instance you are not going to get penalized, but maybe if there will be repetitive instances, obviously there will be penal provisions. Next is about the ease of living enhancement. So that means in order to ensure the better living scenario, there are certain acts where the modification or the amendments were needed. So the New Delhi Municipal Corporation or Councils Act 1994 and the Motor Vehicles Act of 1988, where certain changes that have been incorporated as a part of this particular bill in order to ensure the ease of living, which is also part of the larger this particular bill. Right. Next is regarding the streamlined adjudication. So right now the issue is for minor fines punishment, generally the cases are referred to the court. Now we know that there have been a lot of overburdening of the judiciary. So in that case, if every time the cases are being transferred to judiciary, it increases the time duration in order to resolve. So if there will be adjudicating power provided to the designated officer with the proper executive authority, in that case the fines and other things can be imposed by these particular officers, which will reduce the burden on the court. Agar मान लीजिए if there have been some kind of escalation or maybe the kind of things that you want to file again, मतलब appeal file करना आपको, in that case you can go to the court, but first instance में there can be some designated authorities which can impose the penalties in certain cases. Automatic penalty revision. So there is gradual increase of the penalty 10% after every 3 years that has been ensured in order to ensure कि भाई there will be adequate deterrence and that the amount has to be changed over a period of time with respect to the changing scenario. ऐसा ना हो कि today also 500 rupees fine for certain grave violation which previously used to be high but right now not that much value, right? So that has also been ensured. So these are the provisions which are ensured as a part of the Jan Vishwas Bill amendment provisions, right? If accepted, then this will become the part of the original act, right? Next is regarding the Ministry of Power, which has issued the revised draft notification on the Renewable Consumption Obligation RCO framework. Now, you might have already heard of the Renewable Purchase Obligations RPO. So, in this particular article, we'll see what are the basic differences between two. Now, from the perspective of the UPSC examination, this particular topic is important from the GS paper 3 because in the renewable energy scenario, environment and ecology, it is important. Apart from that, the economy infrastructure, because the renewable energy is very important aspects from the perspective of the economy, infrastructure, even the energy transition from the renewable energy policy and regulation. This is a very important aspect, right? Now, what are the key features of this particular notification? So the notification has been issued under the Energy Conservation Act of 2001. So Energy Conservation Act of 2001 में there have been this particular notification that have been issued now, that is ensuring the mandatory year-wise renewable energy consumption target. Means you are going to set, you have set certain targets that by this year this much percentage of the total energy should be coming or consumed from the renewable energy. So this particular renewable consumption obligation, not the purchase. You not only need to purchase, but you have to even consume that particular renewable energy. So this is on the end product, जहां पर आप consume कर रहे हो energy, right? So the targets from 2024-25 to 29-30. So till 2030, there are targets that have been set. Now this notification is moving the entire trajectory from the towards the renewable consumption obligation from the present renewable purchase obligation, right? Now these particular targets are binding. These are the binding obligations with the penalties for the non-compliance. Now who is the authority in this case? It is the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, right? Now what is the difference between the renewable purchase obligation and the renewable consumption obligation? Now the differences can be seen from certain header. For example, what is the primary goal? So in the case of the renewable purchase obligation, the primary goal is to ensure that there should be proper purchasing of the renewable energy as a part of the total energy ka sourcing, right? So this much percentage should be purchased or procured as far as the renewable energy is concerned. So to drive the demand for the renewable energy by mandating its purchase. Now, right now it is in somewhat like 25-26%, but that has to be ensured by 2030, roughly 43-44% of the total, right? In the renewable consumption obligation, it is to ensure that the purchased renewable energy is actually consumed. So this is on the consumption. मतलब ऐसा ना हो कि in order to manipulate data, you have just purchased that particular energy in the numbers but not actually consumed. Here the target is in order to ensure the consumption or the actual consumption, right? So this is the basic difference based upon the primary goal. Next is about the mandate. So the renewable purchase obligation is the part of the Electricity Act of 2003, but the renewable consumption obligation RCO is the part of the Energy Conservation Amendment Act of 2022, right? So this RCO को जो notify किया गया, that is the Energy Conservation Act of 2001, right? Now there have been an amendment that have been done in 2022 based upon which this particular renewable consumption obligation have been notified. Next is regarding the applicability. Now the applicability is similar. So for example, in the RPO ke case mein, it is the electricity distribution company, which are the DISCOMs, then the captive power producer, then open access consumer, all of them part of this particular RPO. But in the case of this RCO, it applies to the designated consumer, then the distribution licensee, then the captive user, then apart from that, even the open access consumer. So the consumer base is somewhat similar. Next is about the key differences. So in the case of RPO, which is the renewable purchase obligation, it is the obligation on the procurement. It is on the procurement only. That means buying the power. And in the consumption, the obligation is on the consumption or the utilization. That means on the consumption of that particular percentage or the unit of electricity from the renewable energy. So this is the basic difference. It is on the procurement and the RCO is on the consumption. Then the trajectory, main target क्या है? Target दोनों का लगभग similar है. The reach minimum share of 43.33% by 2029-30. And here in the RCO के case में भी it is also the incremental annual requirement and ultimately reaching to 43.33% by 2030, right? So in that particular case, the targets are somewhat similar. Now there have been actualization ki whatever you are purchasing, that should actually be consumed. That means the data forgery or maybe the manipulation of data should not be done. Now, in this case, what kind of PYQ UPSC had asked? So the UPSC had asked the question regarding the targets. Like, do you think India will meet the 50% of its energy need from the renewable energy by 2030? Justify your answer. How will the shift of the subsidies from the fossil fuel to the renewable energy help achieve the above objective? Explain. Means there have been some speculation that whether we are going to meet the 50% of the energy need from the renewable energy. Now we have seen previously also roughly 50% ke around we have reached from the non-fossil fuel resources. Now it is from the renewable energy. So there have been some more targets that have to be achieved. And apart from that, it is not only about the purchasing. It has to be also about the consumption. Changing the attitude of the people with respect to the consumption of the renewable energy. So there have been certain things that can be utilized from the above article in this particular kind of answer. Like this UPSC framed the question. The UPSC had asked also about the Paris Agreement, the INDCs, and also those particular things can also be fitted over here. The next article, that is about the Minister of State for the Jal Shakti, who has highlighted the role of modern technology for the water management and the conservation. So water management conservation is a very important topic these days, right? Because of the climate change, global warming, a lot of aquifers are depleting, right? The sources which used to be the traditional sources, they are basically breaking down. They are not anymore able to take care of the water, and even sometimes they are being abandoned, right? So in order to ensure the better and the sustainable water conservation, there have been the utilization of the modern technology. Now from the perspective of the UPSC GS paper 2-3, both the papers mein this is important because the polity and governance and the science and tech aspect, this is a mix of both. When we talk about the water resource management, use of the modern technologies, water conservation management for enhancing the sustainability, this automatically becomes the part of the GS3. Also, there can be question with respect to the irrigation, with respect to the water use, with respect to different technological incorporation like the science and tech wala aspect. But from the policy domain governance perspective, because urbanization and a lot of things which are part of GS1, and sometimes even certain things with respect to the governance which includes the urban governance related aspects becomes the part of GS2 also. So it is a mixed kind of topic that can be fitted in different papers. Now there are certain technologies which are for the water management and conservation, and we have to discuss about those technologies one by one. First is regarding the AI driven analysis. Now see, right now there have been a lot of data that is available, right? Based upon that, which particular region may how many resources are there, how many that aquifers are available, what kind of traditional methodologies that was utilized, right? So now based upon the GIS and the satellite data, in order to collate the data, in order to structure that particular data, and in order to get certain output from that specific data, we have been doing all these things through the AI driven analysis. Now based upon that, we will be able to identify that what kind of rainwater harvesting and the water budgeting technologies can be utilized in these regions. So through this we will be able to utilize the area specific approach. Jahan par zyada water conservation hai, there we can utilize different technology compared to where there is scarce water collection and availability. Next is regarding drone. So basically, in order to ensure the surveillance, you will need or monitoring, you will need certain technological equipment. So the drones are the technological tool for surveying and the creation of the high resolution maps, because they are very near to the surface, right? So through that you will be able to actually, and on the real time basis, you will be able to get the data. And also for the automated inspection, so suppose karo you have introduced some changes, now you want to see the result of that, you can deploy the drone technology. Next is regarding the IoT sensors and the smart sensors. Now what you are trying to say by the IoT and the smart sensors, basically based upon a entire connected network, you are going to see that how these particular sensors are generating certain real-time monitoring. So based upon that, you are going to get the idea regarding the water quality, the consumption pattern, and similarly through this you will be able to do the real-time changes. If there have to be certain changes that has to be incorporated, that also can be incorporated through these IoT sensors and the smart sensors. आप एक consumption pattern का पता लगा सकते हैं. You will be able to get that what kind of technological solutions can be incorporated. You will be able to identify that how you can divert from the excess region to the deficit region. So all these things you can do through the IoT sensors and the smart sensors by identifying the pattern. Next is regarding the micro irrigation system. So there are certain technological things with respect to the precision agricultural technologies, specifically with respect to irrigation. So drip irrigation, micro irrigation, right? These particular technologies ensure that in the less water availability, you can ensure the high yield, right? So the drip and the sprinkler irrigation. Advanced water treatment, because right now when the water is available, sometime it is not available in the consumption utilizable format, right? So in that case you have to alter, you have to purify that. So the UV and the membrane technologies that have to be utilized, like there is reverse osmosis or the RO technologies. Apart from that, the membrane bioreactors that are also being utilized, right? Apart from the different other technologies. Last is the blockchain technology. Now you might be wondering how blockchain technology is helpful for the water management and water conservation. Now the blockchain में decentralized network के through you are going to get the information, data, and all these things is available in the public domain. So there will be secure, transparent, and efficient way that can be generated through this particular blockchain technology in order to provide the prominent and proper utilization, distribution, and ensuring the quality. Now India क्या क्या use कर रहा है इसमें से India's technological integration in the groundwater management. So India is utilizing the GIS, which is the Geographic Information System, for the monitoring that how the irrigation projects are being done. So the micro irrigation projects and minor irrigation projects mein we are ensuring this GIS system along with that geotagging and other things like satellite mapping is there. Apart from that, the real-time data acquisition system is there. So monitoring the surface and the groundwater level through the under the National Hydrology Project. So through satellite observation, through different other kind of sensors, we are observing this under the National Hydrology Project. Apart from that, the India Groundwater Resource Estimation System INGRESS, which is the groundwater resource estimation system, and this is under the ambit of the Central Groundwater Board. So these are different technological tool under different program in order to utilize the technology or integrating technology in the water conservation and management. Next is regarding the satellite data. So there is a GRACE portal, which is the Gravity Recovery and the Climate Experiment, and this particular program is ensuring the large scale groundwater storage assessment. So through that particular, that the changes observed with respect to the gravitation in that particular region, there will be satellite observation, and through this you will be able to know regarding the larger aquifers in that specific region, right? So these are the technological tools or technological integration that the India is doing with respect to the groundwater management and the assessment, right? Now, see, regarding the PYQ, specifically the PYQ had more focused upon the irrigation and the agriculture related aspects. So you can see almost every year the question is being asked regarding the agriculture and the irrigation related things. Now, the groundwater is being utilized for the irrigation. Apart from that, the management of the better groundwater in ensuring that there will be sustainable irrigation that can be done. So these two things are interlinked, and if these things will be utilized better way mein, then in that case the agriculture is also going to prosper in a better manner, right? So all the questions you can see through this, you will be having an idea regarding what kind of questions UPSC is asking. For example, measure to improve the water storage and irrigation system to make its judicious use under the depleting scenario, right? Now with this, we have completed the main news. Now there are certain quick updates. The first is regarding the Protection of Children from the Sexual Offences Act, POCSO Act of 2012. Now the context is that recently the Karnataka High Court has dismissed the women's plea in quashing a sexual assault complaint against her under the POCSO Act. The court said कि भाई this particular act is gender neutral, whether you are a woman or you are a man who have committed this particular crime under the POCSO Act. The act is gender neutral, right? So the observation, the act applies to both men and women, and it is a gender neutral. Now what is the objective? The objective is to protect the children from the sexual offenses. Now who is children in this case? Anyone who is below 18 years is considered as the children in a child in this particular case. Any person below the 18 years of age. Now this act is protecting the child from the sexual assault, then the sexual harassment and the pornography, right? So all these cases may this particular act applies. Now the safeguards, what are safeguards that are being provided? Special court, then the in-camera proceedings, then the mandating report of the offenses, simple language utilization in the reports, and penalty even up to as severe as the death penalty that can be provided. Again, depending upon the nature of assault, depending upon the nature of harassment, the punishment can be till the death penalty also. So this is regarding the protection of children from the Sexual Offences Act. Next is regarding the periodic labor force survey. So recently the quarterly report has been released and monthly has been released for the PLFS. So it is the periodic labor force survey. As the name suggests, it is for the labor force. Now those who are employed, those who are not employed, those who are employed, among that how many are the women or the female employment, right? So all these things, all these kind of data we are going to get from the PLFS, which is a periodic labor force survey. Now it is estimating the indicators related to the employment and unemployment. What kind of indicators? So it is talking about the labor force participation rate. It is also talking about the female labor force participation rate, workers population ratio. So कितने workers हैं, and out of the total population who is in the working age, उस population का कितना percentage है. Then apart from that, the unemployment rate, then the distribution of the workers by the employment status and the industry of work. So all these things, it is being provided by the periodic labor force survey. Now this is being released by the data and other things are being collected, collated and released by the National Statistics Office, which is a part of the MOSPI, which is the Ministry of Statistics and the Program Implementation. Now the current weekly status and all these things are part of this. Okay. Next is regarding the Technology Development Board. So the context is that TDB, which is the Technology Development Board, backs the indigenous AI-powered blood testing devices for the primary healthcare. So the Technology Development Board ने back किया है the indigenous development of the AI-powered blood testing devices, right? So this particular Technology Development Board is the board that is established as a statutory authority as part of the Technology Development Board Act of 1995. This board was established in 1996, and since this is derived from the particular act, this is a statutory body. Now, apart from that, what is the mandate? What is the intended objective? So to promote the development and the commercialization of the indigenous technology. So development karna technology ka, then scaling up like the commercialization of that technology. Not only the indigenous one, even some external technologies also, or the imported technology in India, that have also to be utilized in a proper manner, and the scaling up of that is also the mandate. Now, how this is ensuring the scaling up and all these things? So it is providing the capital or the loans to the industrial scenarios or the businesses and all, right, and the financial assistance to the research and development institutions. So it is promoting the development and the commercialization of those particular technologies which are either indigenous for the commercialization and for the imported technologies in order to scale up, right? Next is regarding the agriculture infrastructure and the development cess. Now we know already about the cess that it is collected on and above any specific taxes, and this cess becomes part of the non-devolutionary fund. Matlab, this is not divisible between the center and state. Cess is being collected for the specific purposes generally. Maybe education cess for the education and the associated program, health wala cess for the health and associated program. Now, the government has scrapped the import duty on the cotton as well as the agriculture infrastructure and the development cess. So the government has decided in the public interest that we are scrapping import duty on the cotton along with the agriculture infrastructure and development cess. Now the agriculture infrastructure and development cess is basically an additional duty, means it is on and above certain duties that are already being imposed, and that is specifically imposed on the petroleum and the diesel products, and as a duty of customs on certain other imports. So generally on the petrol and diesel products, and other than that certain other products पे ये implement किया जाता है, apply किया जाता है. Now the union budget of 21-22 has ensured levying of this. So the budget has allowed levying of this particular cess on and above certain existing duty. Now this is utilized for financing agriculture infrastructure and other development expenditure. So when the cess is applied, there is some specific task that is there from which the fund that is there collected by cess that will be utilized, right? Next is regarding the Chief Election Commissioner. So right now the Election Commission is a lot in news, and UPSC mein this particular means which is about to be there is a high probable question that can be regarding the Election Commission of India. And recently there have been again the statement by the Chief Election Commissioner, right? So in that case the body becomes important. So what the opposition parties are now planning, they are planning to remove the Chief Election Commissioner. They are planning to bring the motion. Obviously they cannot remove, but they can bring the motion. Now what is the procedure? So the procedure is mentioned as part of the 124(4). Article 124 of subclause 4 mentions about the procedure of removal. Now this particular procedure of removal is for the judges of the Supreme Court. Now the Constitution mentions, Article 324(5) mentions that the removal of the Chief Election Commissioner will be similar as the removal of the Supreme Court judges, right? So in what manner Supreme Court judges are being removed? So in the manner judges of the Supreme Court, now there will be a motion that will be brought, right? Now the motion can be brought in any house of the Parliament. Once it is accepted by the House of Parliament and passed in that particular house by the majority of not less than 2/3, ठीक है, तो मतलब special majority है, right? So it is the majority of the total membership of house and not less than 2/3 of present and voting. Okay, so it is the special majority of 2/3 members present and voting in the both house of the Parliament. So this is the process of the removal of the judge of Supreme Court in the similar manner to the Chief Election Commissioner also. Now for the election commissioners, it is mentioned that it cannot be removed without the approval of the chief election commissioner. मतलब उस केस में there is ambiguity that is mentioned, but for the chief election commissioner it is clearly mentioned that he or she cannot be removed in the process mentioned other than the removal process for the judge of Supreme Court, right? Next is regarding United Nations High Commissioner for the Refugees, UNHCR. So the UNHCR has temporarily suspended the process of facilitating the repatriation of the Sri Lankan Tamil refugees, right? So it was previously known as the Office of the High Commissioner of the Refugees, okay, OHCR, and later on UNHCR was established, right? Now this was established as a part of the UN General by the resolution of the UN General Assembly in 1950 after the World War II. This particular body was established. Now this is the UN refugee related agency that is for saving the life and protecting the rights or the basic human rights of the refugees. So the rights of refugees related, the concerned body is the UNHCR. Now, UNHCR also serves as the guardian of the 1951 Refugee Related Convention and the 1967 Protocol related to refugees. Now, in these bodies, generally the important thing is regarding the headquarters that can be asked, right? It also had received twice the Nobel Peace Prize. So, this is also one such fact that can be talked about. So, the headquarter is in Geneva, Switzerland, right? Next is regarding the bond yield. Now see, the bond yield is simply, we can say, the kind of interest that is generated over the bond. So suppose karo, if you are purchasing bond, let's say if you are purchasing the bond at 100 rupees, right? And after maybe 1 year, you are going to get the 110 rupees out of that particular bond. So in that case, what is the yield right now? The yield is 10 rupees. Now in otherwise case, अब suppose करो, maybe on certain other instrument you get to know कि आपको ज्यादा पैसा मिल रहा है. Now हो सकता है some instrument is providing कि submit 100 rupees and in 6 months you are going to get 120 rupees. So 100 से 120 हो जाएगा सिर्फ 6 months में. Now you will think my money is stuck up over here. What you will try to do, you will see कि भाई देखो 6 months हो चुके हैं, roughly मेरे को अगर if I might have got 10 rupees in the year end, if right now I'll send it maybe at 5 rupees extra, means 105 में अगर मैं बेच दूं, and if anybody is going to purchase this particular price bond at 105, then I'll be like I'll be having money and I can invest that particular money on certain other instrument. Now in that case, if anybody is purchasing that particular, anybody might be saying कि भाई not 105, I am purchasing this in 104. Let's say they got a deal. Now in that case, what will be the money extra that this person is going to get? 6 rupees, because on maturity after 6 months he is going to get 110 rupees. So this is the 6 rupees extra. So this is the yield. Now in that case, you can say whether the yield has increased or decreased. So for 6 months he is getting 6 rupees extra. That means for his case the yield has a bit increased. For 6 months duration he is getting 6 rupees extra. Now in this particular person's case, he has got, instead of 5 rupees, only 4 rupees extra. So this particular yield is a relative concept in this case. Now this is dependent upon a lot of factors. Maybe अगर कोई नया instrument मिल जाता है, person might be interested more in spending in that particular instrument rather than purchasing bond. Maybe next new bond is providing more money. Maybe the interest rate in market has risen so that the person is keeping his or her money in the fixed deposit, maybe, right? So the yield on the benchmark sovereign bond has increased significantly. जब yield बढ़ती है, that means bond का price कम होता है. Suppose करो, अगर if this person is thinking कि भाई even if I am not getting extra amount, let's sell this particular bond even at 100 rupees, or let's say even at 99 rupees. Maybe हो सकता है the day he or she has purchased, उसको लगा कि I might have spent it in this particular instrument getting 20 rupees extra. So maybe 99 में spend कर दिया. Now the person who is getting 99 में this particular bond, ultimately on maturity that person is getting 110. So 11 rupees extra. So for him, the yield has increased, right? So this is the concept of yield. Now the bond's yield is return on the investor realizes over the capital invested in the bond. Now factors जो impact करते हैं, affected by the bond price, there is an inverse relationship. Then again, apart from that, the market interest rate, the newly issued bond, right, which is offering better rates, right? Apart from that, even the changes in the market sentiments, inflation expectation, economic outlook. Maybe अगर लग रहा है आपको कि भाई this particular bond might not be giving me 110 rupees later on, market crash करेगा, right? So in that particular case also the scenario may be changing. Maybe if the inflation is rising so much that this particular 110 is not going to give any value, so in all these cases there will be impact on the bond yield, right? So this is the concept of bond yield. Next is regarding FASTag. So Ministry of Road Transport and Highway has launched the annual pass. In that annual pass, what you can do, purchase a pass of 3,000 rupees. In that entire year में this particular free toll passing that you are going to get, but maximum number of time is 200 tolls. ठीक है? So 200 tolls and 3,000 rupees. In year हो सकता है, you may spend it even in 1 month or maybe within 1 year. So 1 year is the duration, right? So those who are the frequent commuters, for them it will be a comparatively hassle free because you need not to recharge it again and again. Now the FASTag is basically the device that is employed and that is using the radio frequency identification technology and the near short range technology that is utilized as the technology in order to ensure the transaction. Now what you are doing, basically there is a scanner over there on the toll plaza, and then there will be a barcode which is attached on your vehicle's the front mirror, right? And there will be scanning of that particular FASTag through the scanner, and then the money is deducted from your FASTag account, right? This is the process. Now it is managed by the NPCI, National Payments Corporation of India, and also the National Highways Authority of India, NHAI. Next is regarding the organization of biodiversity. So recently there has been a study that is conducted regarding the general special organization of biodiversity within the Earth's different biogeographical region. So they have identified certain commonality that in the core to transition region, there has been changes with respect to the biodiversity. In the core hotspot, there have been very rich biodiversity. Matlab, there are endemic species, there are specific species to that specific region. So high species richness, high endemicness, right? Almost no foreign species that are available. Means that particular core area में उस region के specific species ही present रहते हैं. The next inner layer में species rich होते हैं, more endemic species, but some other foreign species might be present. Next is regarding middle layer, where there is no such species richness, there is mixing of different species from different regions. So presence of some non-characteristic species also. In the transition zone, there is species poor zone, then dominated by the wide-ranging generalist species from different regions, right? So this is regarding the organization of biodiversity, a generalistic observation with respect to that. Now with this, we have completed the current affairs discussion for today, right? Now after this, there are certain questions that might be on the screen, and having gone through those particular questions, do comment your answers also in the comment section. That will ensure that how you are performing as compared to the other students. Also go on the digital current affairs portal, read those articles if there are any specific doubts, and also ensure that there are certain quizzes that are available based upon the specific day's news today, right? So attempt those particular quiz also in order to ensure the holistic practice. Okay, chalo. So I hope the things are clear to you. Thank you very much.